Andy, I love how you describe the technological perspective. What kind of fears do you think might be associated with, particularly for youth ministers who may want to turn from that perspective, but have different fears around it? What type of fears may be associated with that, and how do they get around those fears?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. One of the ways I've tried to push a corrective in youth ministry is to really embrace the theological as a corrective. But that does lead, I mean, that feels like that ups the ante to the point where it could lead youth workers to feel like, well, I'm not sure I could do that. I mean, that seems overwhelming. And I really don't want it to become this push towards the theological, like, well, unless you have 2 or 3 advanced theological degrees, you need not apply for this or you're not qualified. I really hope like the theological turn in youth ministry is inclusive to mom who is giving 4 hours a week to do this, but she too is taking a theological turn, or a young guy in a congregation who just kind of stumbles into this because worked at camp for one summer. I think that the theological turn can happen there, and so I think one of the fears is just I don't even know how to spell theology. How could you expect me to do the theological? I think that's a huge fear. I think another really huge fear that is sensed by youth workers that doesn't always come from within them. Like I think that fear comes often within their own fear, in their own person. But another fear I think is what they sense outside. And I think the fear that they feel outside is, well, okay, if I take a theological turn, there's expectations on me from this church, from this institution, from this group of parents. And what they ultimately want is that the numbers at least are trending up. Mm-hmm. And the excitement, the energy is for sure trending up. Mm-hmm. And our experience when we wrote the Theological Turn was that when youth pastors would go to their senior pastor, say, and say, we would like to. I think we have to think more theologically about what we're doing. I mean, this is not quite fair, but it's fair enough. It's true enough that the senior pastor would kind of pat the youth pastor on the head and say, "Well, that's cute, and if you can do that, do that. But really, what I need is the numbers to be trending up. Maybe not spiking up, but they need to be trending up, and the energy's got to be up. So, if you want to think theologically, that's great, but just making sure those two things are in place. So I think it feels like it could feel personally intimidating, or it could feel like I know whether it's been stated or it's implicit. I know I've been hired to build a program, and if I start shifting away from that, I could lose my job. And I think we have to be really sensitive to that. I want to be sensitive to that. But I think what we found on the reverse side, and at least I deeply believe, is that there's life in taking a theological turn, because it leads us to asking questions about God and how God acts, and it leads into our own faith life and our own process of discipleship that I think really builds depth in our ministry. And so I think it becomes important.